Hey, I'm Audra Yankton, empowerment and intuition coach, and this is Unveil You, the podcast where spirituality meets practicality to help you step fully into your power. Each episode, we'll talk about what it really means to align with your higher self, trust your inner knowing, and walk through life with grounded, soul-led confidence. Let's get into it. Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome back to the Unveil You podcast. I'm your host, Audra, and I want to start this new season. Well, we're a few episodes in now, but I wanted to definitely put this towards the beginning, a conversation that feels grounding, not overwhelming, because I have a lot of topics this season that I want to cover that are all going to build on each other and kind of tie together. So upcoming topics will be things like spiritual awakening, just energy in general, money, relationship with money, and identity. But before we do that, I realized that there's actually something even more fundamental that would need to be set the stage before we talk about any of that, which is trust. And more specifically, can you trust what you feel inside your own body? And one of the most common questions I had myself when I was starting to figure out that intuition isn't just a buzzword. You hear things like, oh, it's just a mother's intuition. No, intuition is this whole full-blown concept that all of us have access to, right? And I was sorting through what that actually was. And as somebody who has previously been a high-functioning, high-anxiety person, before I kind of got a handle on that through different methodologies that I talk about a lot on this podcast, is that I was having a hard time discerning between feelings, which was, is this my intuition or is this my anxiety that I'm feeling? And if you've ever had that question yourself, even quietly, this is the episode for you. So why does this confusion exist? And here's the first thing I want you to know is that if you struggle to tell the difference between intuition and anxiety, that does not mean that you're disconnected. It means more than likely that you were conditioned. So most of us were raised in systems such as families or schools or workplaces that taught us to value logic, productivity, and most of all, for a lot of us, this should be relatable, external approval over our own inner knowing and our own individuality. So we were taught to question our feelings and to override instincts and to explain ourselves and to be reasonable. Does this sound familiar to you? So your intuition didn't disappear. It just basically faded into the background when, you were told you were wrong about something that you thought was right for you. It just learned basically to whisper under the layers of survival, urgency, and self-protection. So what is anxiety actually? Let's talk about anxiety for a moment because understanding it removes a lot of the shame associated with it. Anxiety is not the same thing as intuition. Anxiety is your nervous system trying to keep you safe based on past experiences. So anxiety is future focused. It speaks in what ifs, the what if spiral. It feels urgent and loud. It wants answers right now, not tomorrow, right now. And it tries to control outcomes. So anxiety contracts the body. It speeds the mind up. It convinces you that relief is just one thought or decision away, which we all know that goalpost always keeps moving, especially when you're in an anxiety spiral. At its core, anxiety is a memory, not a truth. And anxiety, I realize, has actually been the root cause of any and all of my mental health issues personally. I know we're all on a different journey there when it comes to mental health, but for me, anxiety was the root cause of literally every mental health issue I ever went through. 100% of the time, not just 9 out of 10 times, literally 100% of the time, it preceded my depressive episodes. Even when I was going through severe postpartum depression with my daughter a few years back, I can pinpoint exactly when the depression started versus the anxiety that came before it. I was having a lot of anxiety about just raising a human and all the crazy stuff that could possibly happen and go wrong. And, when it's your own flesh and blood, it's a whole different thing than when it's just you, when you have little feet on the ground. So I remember having probably a week of very intense anxiety I couldn't get a hold of. And then boom, I was depressed, severely depressed after that. So I am not a psychologist, disclaimer, but I know for a fact that I would not have depression if I didn't have severe anxiety in the past. When I took antidepressants before, off and on throughout my adulthood, for different things. They always were treating like chemical depression, but I didn't have a chemical depression issue. That's why things were not working for me for the longest time. It was because I had this severe anxiety that was actually just driving the depression to happen. Like you can only feel anxious for so long before your body gets depressed. So that is what I do believe was happening to me. And believe it or not, though, through mindset work, I've actually been able to train myself out of anxiety spirals that ultimately would lead to these depressive episodes. And those are all tools I share in my podcast, like EFT, the tapping, affirmations, like telling myself that I am not in a dangerous situation, and then choosing to believe it in that moment. That was something, actually, a hack that I got from a therapist way back in the day, probably 10 years ago, is if you're in this anxiety spiral, to just say to yourself or ask yourself, am I in a dangerous situation? Because more often than not, you're not. Even if it's anxiety about a bill that you feel like you can't pay. In the moment, in the very present moment, think about like, is my life being threatened right now? And if it's a no, then like just take a deep breath and just cling to that feeling that you're not in a dangerous situation. It might seem really small, but that was a huge, you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere to shift yourself out of these anxious episodes, because if you don't have something you can ground and grab onto, you can't really get out of that. So just start with something small, like I am not in a dangerous situation, and just choose to believe that. And I'm not saying that anxiety does not rear its ugly head here and there. For me personally, when I'm confronted with new information and I am processing, that's kind of like the only times these days that I do experience anxiety, is I get new information or something's just like half baked and not really thought out, and it just gets ran past me, or I get information and I don't know the whole story. During that time where I might be processing, sometimes my old anxious programming comes out to say hi, unfortunately. But I've gotten better about recognizing my trigger feelings before I hit this thing that a lot of us have probably heard about through therapy or other modes, the anxiety spiral, or going down the pit of shame, or whatever you want to call it. I'm able to recognize those trigger feelings before that happens, and I'm able to ground myself again before I go into this full-blown panic, which is very derailing to everything I've done for myself, and something that you don't want to go back to. So how can you recognize an anxiety spiral? Because it rarely shows up as just one isolated thought. Like if you've ever heard a friend, sometimes it's easier to actually identify anxiety when you hear a friend talk it through. Like if like all the kind of silly things that they're starting to stitch together, like, oh, if this doesn't happen, then this won't happen, then this thing won't happen. And you're like, you on the outside, because you're not feeling those emotions, can kind of tell like, okay, this is a little overblown. Like those things aren't even logically, not even one of them will happen, let alone all three in rapid succession like that. So easy to sometimes identify outside, but when it's for you, how can you notice that? So because that's not always so easy, or it wouldn't happen, right? It can really start to spiral. So you might notice things like rapid looping thinking, jumping to worst case conclusions, even ones that make like no logical sense, replaying conversations or imaginary futures, or different outcomes or whatever, and feeling like you have to figure this out right now. Like there is absolutely no way you would allow yourself in a future state to figure this out. Like even if you have limited resources and in the future might be a better time, it's like anxiety says, nope, we have to solve this right now. And then it might, my number one thing that happens to me when I start to go down the anxiety spiral, that I've really had to train myself, like, oh, here we go on that spiral, is this sense of urgency to decide something or fix something right now. So it's like when I'm trying to make choices that I'm not even really all that well informed on, if it's just too hard, it's probably because I need to wait a minute and just get a hold of myself. And that will be the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop right here. So in the body, it can also, like, cause that's all mental. Now there's physical things that come with this too. I don't have to tell all of you that have experienced anxiety before, but just naming them here, for the sake of the conversation. This could be for some people like tightness in the chest or the throat, shallow breathing, a racing heart. You know, your skin might flush and get hot, your chest might splotch, your face might splotch. Like, you ever seen somebody give a speech before and you can tell they're really nervous because all of a sudden their skin turns like 5 shades more red and they're splotchy everywhere? That's an anxiety response. If you haven't noticed it in yourself, like surely you can see that in other people. You might even feel frozen or restless at the same time, like just this fight or flight response. Like that would be the opposite of that. Some people run away, some people fight, sometimes you freeze. That's anxiety. And if any of that feels familiar, just pause here. Because before we talk about intuition, we have to slow the system down. You literally can't tap into your intuition if you're having one of these anxiety spirals. That's why I'm setting so much up here at this beginning part of this episode, is because we need to be able to name what anxiety is and know what that feeling is so that you aren't confusing that with intuition. So we now know what an anxiety spiral can look like, but how do we interrupt that? What good is it knowing if we don't know how to actually empower ourselves to interrupt that spiral? And here's something important that is not said enough, is that you do not need clarity when you're anxious. Like, don't make that the goal. That's something I insist on having in an anxiety spiral. And that is the opposite of what you should be having. You don't need it. And in fact, anxiety is preventing clarity. So the goal in these moments is to not figure anything out. It's to create safety. For example, having a sense of urgency to decide or fix something, again, is my number one anxiety spiral symptom. And I've had to force myself to pause and promise myself that if I still feel the same way tomorrow, then I can act then from this calm place. So I literally will just be like in the moment, if someone's not asking me make a decision now, like, which how often does that happen? Like maybe at a fast food restaurant, right? Like you have to tell me what you want at the counter, but like that's not life or death. That's not life changing. You're just picking a meal that you might not like, whatever, no big deal. But if you have a really big decision you have to make and you don't know the answer, sleep on it. That's what I force myself to do, is to just sleep on it, because more often than not, you really don't have to make choices right now. And I'm like, if I sleep on it and I still feel this way tomorrow after kind of letting my head organize itself again, then I can make that choice that I'm feeling right now. But guess what? 9.9 out of 10 times, my decision is a lot easier and probably not the decision I would have made out of anxiety the next day. So it's really, really important that I do that. I take that pause. And just taking this pause gives my anxiety this immediate resolution, right? Because anxiety wants something right now. It doesn't negotiate in that way. So I'm giving my anxiety an immediate resolution by promising a solution. And then I give myself this advantage by being able to make choices from a more grounded place. So here are a few more simple anchors you can incorporate. So you're having an anxiety attack, you're kind of panicking. We all know how important breathing techniques are, right? So slow down your exhale. It should be longer than your inhale. I don't know. Some people do like 5 seconds in through the nose and then 7 seconds out through the mouth. And also if you count the seconds, that kind of distracts you and makes you force the anxiety spiral forces you to break the anxiety spiral. So it's important to, count sometimes. I've had to do that. In through the nose, out through the mouth. It's very effective. And again, it's just very distracting for my mind more than anything. And if after the fact, I can't even remember what I was so anxious about, bingo. That's the whole goal. That's what we're looking for. Just a few episodes ago, I released an episode on EFT tapping, which, if you know what that is, awesome. That, if not, you can go watch that episode. A visual way of looking at it through either Spotify or YouTube is a better way to watch that episode, because you can actually see me go through all the different tapping sequences, but that's free and it's super quick and easy. And this is best to use when the feeling of anxiety is most active. It can help release the anxiety when the feeling is most active for you. So if nothing else, use your karate chop spot right here on the left side of your hand, just under your pinky. Sorry, this is my left hand. The side of your hand by your pinky. Just use your other hand to tap on that as you're having this anxiety attack, and it will kind of start to calm you down and put things in their place in your head. And if you don't have time or knowledge or the desire to do a full round of tapping, that's something you can do to start to calm your brain when it's going completely haywire and you can't think of anything else to help you. Another thing you can do is put your feet flat on the ground and just notice the contact of the floor. Feeling held by the container that you're in is very calming. It's like when babies are crying and they like to be snuggled by their moms. Like that is the same thing. It's just like naming the container that is holding you. Like notice your feet being heavy on the floor. That like conscious like connection between your feet being grounded and noticing that can help a lot. You can name, the room that you're in along with that. And then if you remember a long time ago, the bliss list episode that I talked about and how to like make your energy, your frequency higher, that's something like, I don't know, you can go to your bliss list and pick out like, oh, go and like stop what you're doing and paint your nails. I mean, like if it's a really severe anxiety attack, it's not that easy to do. But like, maybe run a bath, like go make yourself a cup of tea, go look at some pictures that make you happy, like whatever that is. If you can just break your concentration from the anxiety attack, however that looks like for you, that can help. Probably on a less severe scale of anxiety, this will help for, but nonetheless, just another option. And something else you can just do is say to yourself that nothing is required of me right now, and try what I do, maybe, which is the bargaining with myself. Promise your spiraling mind that you will address this at, I don't know, 3 p.m. tomorrow, whatever time that is, whatever, maybe 9 a.m., whatever you decide that is, where you're actually naming an exact point in time, the next day or the day after that you will be addressing this, and then go and set a reminder in your calendar on your phone or something so that you can truly check out and know that you will be addressing this. Because my brain, if I don't have an alarm sometimes like set to remind me to do something the next day, that gives me anxiety that I'll forget, and that's counterproductive. We're trying to eliminate anxiety here. So if you've bargained with yourself, like, I will make this choice at 9 a.m. tomorrow, great, put it in your calendar, forget about it until 9 a.m. tomorrow. You have giving yourself full permission to do that. So you want to separate the feeling from the meaning. That's what we're doing here. And this is the biggest thing that helped me to realize, is that feeling anxious does not mean that something is wrong. It just means my nervous system is activated. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your nervous system is overactivated. And once urgency softens, and because that's the whole point of why we're trying to calm anxiety is, well, number one, you want to feel better. But number two, you want your intuition to become accessible to you again. So you cannot like trust your intuition and figure out what your body's trying to tell you or your intuition is trying to tell you if anxiety is going on all cylinders. Like it's just, you cannot have the two at once. It's just impossible to tell the difference for most people. So now that we have defined exactly what anxiety is, now we can talk about what intuition actually is. And intuition can be similar on paper, but ultimately it's a very, very different thing. So intuition is a present moment knowing, okay? So it's quiet, it's often neutral, sometimes subtle to the point where you doubt it. It is so quiet that you're like, wait, is that really something that I thought of? Or where did that thought come from? Intuition, unlike anxiety, this is where it really differs from anxiety, is that it doesn't argue with you, it doesn't rush you, it doesn't need a story, and it often shows up as a simple inner statement. It might sound like this isn't aligned, or not yet, or there's something here. So even when intuition brings uncomfortable information, it does so without panic. It's almost like this non-ego version of yourself and your thoughts has beamed into your head and given you a thought. And you're like, maybe your ego self comes back online and you're like, I don't like that thought. That's not something I want to do. Like, for example, maybe you're in a relationship, and this is an example I'll bring up very soon here, is that, you're dating somebody and you might have this thought that like, oh, I don't know if I really like them anymore. And you're like, wait a minute, where did that come from? That's probably your intuition. So anyway, if you are panicking, that is anxiety. Intuition does not make you panic. It's just a knowing. So now we're going to talk about why intuition can maybe trigger anxiety afterward, because this is where confusion will really set in. Is that sometimes intuition delivers a truth, maybe one that you don't like or are not ready to accept, and then anxiety reacts to the implications of said knowing. So for example, I'm going to go deeper on this relationship example. Say you've been dating somebody for about a year and you feel really good about it. Things are going good. Intuition out of the blue one day says to you that this relationship is not the one for you and it's time to move on. And you maybe weren't ready for that because you're like, well, it's not like I was, anticipating a proposal, but like if somebody, think about it, every relationship that doesn't end in a successful marriage at some point has a point where one person or the other or both sometimes realize it's not a match. where did that feeling come from just out of nowhere? More often than not. I mean, sometimes there are trigger events, yes. But sometimes people are like, yeah, I'm just not feeling it anymore. That's probably your intuition just saying it's time to move on. So your anxiety then at that point might respond with fear, because in that moment you may feel like that can't be true. And you start to wrestle with your preconceived notions that this was a relationship that really was going to work out. After all, you wouldn't date someone for a year if you really thought it was going to be a waste of your time. But at some point, if it isn't for you, your intuition might kick in out of nowhere. Like, I really like you, but this isn't going to work out, and I don't have an answer as to why. That knowing is just your intuition driving you. And just because you don't like the message doesn't mean that it came from fear. All right. So it means external conditioning showed up after the intuitive knowing, which is the anxiety, when the anxiety might enter the chat. So intuition is your signal. Anxiety, in this case, can be the response. Hopefully, you're not feeling a lot of anxiety as you start to trust your intuition more and more. At the beginning, though, sometimes when you get intuitive downloads that you don't like, especially if you're really living off your path of alignment, you're going to start to get a lot of downloads that start to force you in a direction that is in alignment for you. But that's not always comfortable at first, and that can trigger a lot of anxiety for people because some people really, really do not like change. I didn't used to like change at all. Now I'm at the point a couple years down this path for me, my intuitive journey, that like change is really exciting because it's like I'm always trying to like do better and better in life. So before, change meant like my world was crashing down, and like, yeah, an intuitive download of like, hey, you need to like do this thing or change this or whatever, that did cause me a lot of anxiety. But now I'm at the point where like I trust my intuition so much that like, oh, that's exciting. Oh, I got some more information. Like it's time to like do this new thing. Like change can only lead to something better than where I'm at now. So that's how I've chosen to see it. And it's been a really, really beautiful transformation in that way. So the anxiety then after an intuitive download then would be especially common when intuition is challenging things like your identity or your security or your visibility or your belonging. Like when I got an intuitive, hit that a podcast is something I should do. I was not in the realm of wanting to be a podcaster at the time. And I had a lot of anxiety about that, but something in me said, no, this is the thing you need to do. Like, keep going. And, so yeah, it's brought me a lot of really connections and fun conversations. And, I've learned a lot about myself doing this. So like, had I never started doing the podcast, I wouldn't have more understanding of myself as who I am, for example. But at the beginning, this intuitive information that I had to start one really challenged my visibility fears that I had. So there was a lot of anxiety and things. I was like, really? Do I have to do a podcast? Why? So anyway, it ultimately made me a lot better, though, of a person and more comfortable in my own skin. So I'm really glad I chose to just take on the challenge for what it was and do this. So yeah, the anxiety was definitely very present throughout a lot of it, getting this going. And here's another example of how, of this intuition anxiety relationship is you wake up one day knowing maybe you have a job, it's going okay, but you wake up one day and you're just like, I cannot do one more day in this job. This job sucks. I literally, maybe you haven't liked it for a while, but it's been, tolerable. Then all of a sudden you wake up one day, you're like, okay, all of a sudden I can't do this anymore. This isn't working for me. But you have nothing else lined up and you feel stuck, right? So quitting feels right, but that challenges your security. So you really might grapple with the anxiety of that as well. So none of us want to worry about money if like you hate this job, but it's paying your bills kind of thing. Like that's tough. That would be tough to get the intuitive download of like, I can't do this job one more day. But you feel stuck. Like that's another example of that. So how to tell the difference then between intuition and anxiety. That's why we're doing this episode is that once you're grounded, and grounding is the key. And if you don't know what I mean by that, again, it's just kind of like centering yourself, imagining the roots growing out through the bottoms of your feet, connecting with the core of the earth, that lightning rod of energy, so that anything not serving you has a place to go, essentially, rather than stay in you and drive you nuts. Here are a few ways to discern then once you get grounded is speed. What is the speed of the feeling you're having? So anxiety is going to rush you. Intuition is steady. So again, imagine you've gotten some information dump in your head. How do you know if it's anxiety telling you something crazy versus intuition telling you something that the divine wants you to know? It's again, anxiety is going to rush you. Intuition is very, very steady. What is the tone of the information that you have in your head? So anxiety sounds very frantic and like you must do this right now, and scared. And intuition just sounds really simple. It's a very simple fact. Then you're going to look inside your body. Anxiety tightens everything like your chest, your gut. Like we all know what that feeling is. Intuition often lands softly, even when it's uncomfortable information. So you really know it's intuition if like it's an uncomfortable thing that you don't want, but like it just feels right in your body. You're like, even though I don't like it, this is the way it's got to be, and I feel okay with it. That's intuition. Anxiety is going to feel like that crushing feeling in your chest. Or like, what is the story of the information in your head? Is anxiety explains and over explains, and then intuition just states. It's like it's not bargaining with you; it's just telling you something. And finally, repetition. Anxiety is going to loop and intrude, and intuition returns calmly over time. Like maybe you heard something in your intuition like a week ago, and you're like, whatever, you can dismiss it. Anxiety is going to keep looping that and looping that and looping that if it's something that's like being driven by anxiety, versus if this is your all-knowing intuition, it just might come back in a week and it'll just suggest. It'll be always at the right time. So it's a very, very different feeling just overall when you receive information, and that'll help you kind of name where it's coming from. And again, if it's intuition, that's something you probably want to act on. If it's anxiety, we don't want to act on that right now. We want to like, again, name it for what it is and like act on it at a different time. If it is something you need to do, or it's probably something you're making up in your head and we don't need to worry about that. So, and here's one powerful question you can ask yourself is that if I were completely calm, would this knowing still feel true? And if yes, that is intuition, not anxiety. So why don't we trust our intuition then? Because most people don't distrust their intuition because it's unreliable. They learn to distrust their intuition because maybe they were punished for listening to it at some point in their life, maybe as a child, or they were told that they were dramatic or sensitive, or choosing themselves one time before in their life, maybe a childhood moment, led to a loss that they weren't mentally ready for. Like for an example, like maybe a relationship that you had for a long time, maybe your high school sweetheart or something. And it's not working out, but you really want it to work for some reason. And you chose yourself and you broke up with them, and you were like not really like feeling good about that for a while after the fact. Like you chose yourself because your intuition said this isn't right for me, but maybe you weren't mentally ready for that, or mentally mature enough to deal with that. So you might start to ignore your intuition because you're like, I did that once, I listened to it and it really hurt. So no, even though it's just hard. If you don't understand what you're doing is for your highest alignment and your best possible life, it is really hard to trust that your intuition is leading you down the road that is ultimately best for you, because sometimes we try to force roads that we want, not necessarily what is best for us. So unless you're really at a place in your life where you can just accept like whatever my highest self and whatever my soul came to this planet to do and accomplish, like if you're not on board for whatever that is because you're trying to force some like, ego earthly life that isn't meant for you, like listening to your intuition can be hard, because your intuition isn't really too worried about what the ego wants. It's interested in pushing you towards what's in your highest alignment. So and until you're at a place to accept that sometimes what's in your highest alignment isn't what you're doing right now, it can be challenging to want to listen to your intuition. Or sometimes even people distrust it because their truth conflicted with what others needed from them selfishly. So trust wasn't lost because intuition failed. It's just that trust was lost because somebody or society or even themselves told them that they were wrong, and they were conditioned out of the trusting. So rebuilding this trust starts with safety first and foremost. Reconnecting with intuition isn't about being more spiritual, like, burning incense and like the crystals and everything. That's all great and whatever. It's like a different journey for everybody. But like, that's not what reconnecting with your intuition is. It's about being more regulated. So when you allow yourself to slow down, and to pause decisions, and like, you'll hear a lot of people are really connected with their intuition. They meditate. It's not a hokey thing. That's actually like an intentional, like, slow down and pause moment. Like that's what they're doing, is just allowing themselves to connect into their intuition better. It's about allowing yourself to not explain immediately or to feel without urgency. Your intuition will become obvious, and that you'll realize that it was never really gone. It was just kind of shut out, and like you weren't connecting with it. So just know that there's, no matter where you are at in your intuitive journey right now, it is never too late to reconnect back with your intuition. It's literally probably, if it's been a while since you've listened to your intuition, or feel like you've had some kind of intuitive information drop into your head, or just this inner knowing of doing something, like it's probably just screaming at you, like, please connect back with me. It never leaves. It's an unconditional love that we have access to, is our divine birthright of having an intuition. So that's the really great thing, is that no matter where you're at in your life, you will always have intuition that you can develop a relationship with and like allow back into your life. So it's never too late. So in closing, if there's one thing I want you to leave this episode with, it's this, is that you're not broken, you're not disconnected, and your intuition has been with you this entire time, like I was just saying. And it's just been waiting for enough quiet and enough permission to speak clearly again. So please take the time you and your body need to allow for that quiet. And you might be surprised what has silently been waiting in the background for you to come through. And a lot of the time I hear from people who reconnect with their intuition after a long time, it's that like, oh, I've been hearing this in my head for years. And it's like, I just chose not to listen to it until just now. It's like, yeah, well, the intuition is persistent. It doesn't just say, oh, the hell with you, I'm not going to bother anymore. It will literally always be trying to reconnect with you no matter what. So yeah, when you finally listen to it, it's just like, it can only go upwards, that relationship from there. So it's really beautiful. So until then, until our next episode, let yourself pause, and not to figure things out, but to listen. And thank you so much for listening today. And I hope you found this helpful in reconnecting to your intuition. You are not broken. You are just on a journey of remembering, just like the rest of us are. So until next time, I'm Audra, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye.